South Africa's race to 2026 local government elections are well and truly underway, and one of the parties looking to make headwaves is ActionSA, a party formed by former Johannesburg Mayor Herman Mashaba. Joining us today is Michael Beaumont, the national chairperson of ActionSA, speaking to us about the past, present, and future of the party. Michael, thank you very much for making time for Newsday today.
Seth, no, great pleasure. Thank you very much. And congratulations on the platform. I think Newsday is an exciting new platform in a media environment that's become a bit stale. So we look forward to see what you guys bring to the table.
Thank you. Really appreciated. Going back, you've been a key confidant of Herman Mashaba for close to a decade now. Could you briefly take us back to the story of the formation of ActionSA, why it was formed, and what unique gap you were looking to fill in South Africa's political space?
Sure. Well, I think it's a story in which, while serving in Johannesburg with Herman as the mayor, I was his chief of staff. We experienced a change in our then political party, the DA, which doesn't need to be rehashed. I think everyone's tired of hearing that story as much as we're tired of telling it. But certainly, we found ourselves politically homeless. Our political party had left us behind. They had moved in a direction that we think alienated the principles around which we had joined and dedicated so much to that organization. And like many South Africans, we found ourselves without a political home. It is Herman's nature in those moments to say, I'm not going to accept that I'm politically homeless. I must do something about it. The South African political system is stale in as much as a lot of organizations that have been around a long time and have presided over the mess in which we currently reside continue to exist as the only credible choices for the South African people. And therefore, we felt that an alternative was needed. We launched an NGO called the People's Dialogue to have an online conversation with the people of South Africa to see if there was a demand for a new political party and not just a supply. I think too many people start a party because they have an objective rather than the South African people have that objective of them. It was during COVID-19, and this is why it was largely online. And we had an amazing experience, which reached over 30 million South Africans with 2.4 million engagements in that project, giving an overwhelming mandate for the formation of a new political party. And it gave us values of which we operate still to this day that are centrist. They are reasonable and rational values. They are based on principles like non-racialism, the rule of law, a prosperous economic system based on freedom, and other values that place us in what we think is an abandoned political center in South Africa. We think a lot of voters reside in the political center of South Africa. Yes, so many of the parties have moved to the right or the left in order to compete in that space. And, we want to offer a reasonable space for South Africans, and we think that's what we're doing, particularly in a post-GNU world as well.
And ActionSA in 2021 only contested in a select few municipalities. It got a sizable chunk in Johannesburg and Tshwane in particular. Could you take us through how that experience was for you and how 2021 is now different to 2026?
Sure. So I think we contested in just 6 municipalities out of 278. And notwithstanding that fact, we emerged as the 6th largest party in South Africa, which really was a strong first outing just 1 year after we had formed as an organization. Certainly, we had the 2024 election subsequently, which, we didn't get the result we wanted, and we've analyzed our reasons why. We believe that our associations with the multi-party charter for South Africa hurt ActionSA because the great irony of that vehicle is it seemed to be set up by the DA as a platform to decampaign their opponents while they were secretly planning coalition with the ANC the entire time. Refer to the GNU for further details. But also, from our point of view, the spreading ourselves so thinly was a very difficult situation. As a young party, we're competing against organizations that have a lot more money. Some of them are funded by the illicit economy. And it's a challenge to compete in that environment spread across all 9 provinces. So even going into 2026, We will contest a great deal more municipalities than 6. Currently, we're looking at 44. And those 44 comprise of, the economic powerhouse and the greatest number of the concentration of South Africans in our country. But ultimately, we do think that the growth of a political party has to be measured. It has to take time, and it can't happen sustainably overnight. And I use that word because if you look at an organization like MK, everyone would like to have that meteoric single rise in one election. But look at what's happening as a result of those challenges now. Managing your growth is an important part, and we will continue to be the alternative that we will be, and we will convince more South Africans every day to join us at whatever pace they are ready to do it.
And we'll get to the current administration in Tshwane, but straight from 2021, Action SA was in key positions in both Joburg and Tshwane to form part of multi-party governments. It did so in Joburg and Tshwane with the DA administrations. In your assessment, what brought the demise of the administrations in both DA-led administrations in both Johannesburg and Tshwane?
Well, without wanting to be flippant, you've already answered it. It was the DA. And I'll explain why so I can bring you along with my reasoning. When the DA went into government in 2021, they actually had collapsed talks with all other political parties the night before. They didn't even expect to be elected. If you even remember the scenes, their mayor in Ekurhuleni had resigned her council seat and gone back to parliament, believing that she was never going to be elected. And we and other parties called their bluff and said, well, if you're going to collapse talks, we're going to put you into government without a coalition agreement, and then you can negotiate your way out of that. And that's exactly what we did in Johannesburg, Tshwane, and Ekurhuleni. And unfortunately, that was the tone set from day one. The DA continued to run governments that, in our opinion, were not consultative, didn't actually try to bring about a multi-party coalition. And really what they wanted, with great irony, in fact, now that they have the same grievance in the GNU, is they wanted to be the big brother that determined how things should be run, and everyone else just served at their pleasure to keep them in power, which, is one thing. But to make it more about the residents than, political parties, that manifested into serious service delivery issues. The neglect of townships in Tshwane have been systematic in our point of view. And ActionSA has got constituents there that got very angry with our ongoing involvement in that coalition. Same too in Johannesburg. When the PA left and that coalition lost its majority, there were no less than 4 occasions in which political parties that had a majority came to the DA and said, let's do this. Let's reinstate the coalition we used to have. And they shot it down on no less than 4 occasions, which again tells you the irony of a party that runs around saying they're here to rescue Joburg, etc. But it is the situation for which Joburg needs rescuing is of their own making. So from that point of view, we had to have a rethink as a party. We had up until that time said, we will never work with these parties and we'll always work with those parties. And between this experience and the multi-party charter that I mentioned earlier, we've had to have a rethink and grow up a little bit and say, for ActionSA to deliver value to our voters, we have to be able to be in any coalition that is stable and delivers services. And that's the approach we've taken subsequently.
I remember actually interviewing you in council when Joburg didn't have a mayor for a couple of weeks between Tapelo Ahmed and Kabelo Gwamanda. And you were saying that it's difficult to negotiate with partners who don't come to the table. And that's is what you were saying there. Now, for over a year, Tshwane has had an ActionSA mayor, Dr. Nosipi Moya, and several MMCs. Could you please assess the performance and progress of this administration so far? Some of the key highlights.
Yes, absolutely. And there's been a number, to be frank. So from an ActionSA standpoint, we have inherited a city that, we must be clear, has been an absolute mess. For those of your listeners or viewers who are more financially inclined, the liquidity ratio of the city of Tshwane when Dr. Nosipi Moya became mayor was 0.4. Now, anyone with a mind for finance will tell you, you liquidate a company at 0.4. Unfortunately, you can't liquidate a municipality. You have to turn it around and fix it. which is precisely what Dr. Nasipi Moya and her team have been doing. The finances have stabilized in the city, in as much as we now have brought down the debt. 7 billion rand of debt was allowed to build up to Eskom. So the city was collecting electricity money from residents and not giving it to Eskom, which is criminal in our opinion. And we're now starting to bring down that 7 billion rand debt. It's already down about 15% already. Our ratings agencies are starting to give the city a positive ratings outlook because the financial situation is improving. And just last month, in the month of October, the city collected 4 billion rand, a record in the city's history. All of these things pointing to the fact that the city is starting to generate financial stability, because without that, none of the other basics are going to come right if you cannot finance the work that needs to be done on infrastructure. Already there has been 86 billion rand in investment pledges, and critically, in the last quarter, more jobs were created in the city of Tshwane than Cape Town, Durban, and Johannesburg combined, which just demonstrates how much is being done in that particular front. A surplus has been achieved in the first quarter of this year of around 1.9 billion rand. And there has been a huge amount of work going into the infrastructure in Tshwane. A lot of residents experience unstable electricity and water outages, exactly because the approach to maintenance and renewal has been underfunded for so many years. And let me give you an example, because I don't want to talk in theoretics. Let's talk real. The capital budget that Dr. Nasipi Moya inherited for the city of Tshwane, which is the second largest metropolitan in the world, is 2 point something billion rand. In Cape Town, it's 12 billion rand. And it just shows you how that financial position has been eroded over time and has directly impacted upon the city's ability to renew its infrastructure and provide stable services. And then there's a number of important projects that are coming straight out of the ActionSA playbook. Dr. Nasipi Moya is now extending the operating hours of clinics, which is something Herman Mashaba did when he was mayor. She is expanding the Metro Police of 200 new officers, which there hasn't been an expansion of the Metro Police in over 10 years in that city. All of these things point, broadly speaking, to important change that is arising in the city of Tshwane. But I think one thing we want to be clear about here, Seth, is that this is far from over. We can't look at these things and even say we're halfway up the mountain. There is so much more to climb, because the city of Tshwane has been fundamentally neglected by different parties for so long that it's going to take many, many years to get it right. The difference, though, is that for the first time in a long time, people are starting to see improvement.
And in the Tshwane coalition, how is the nature of that working relationship? Because ANC is the largest party, followed by the EFF, then ActionSA. How is that? Does that relationship work? Do they ever try to undermine Dr. Moya? How has that been?
Well, it's certainly been challenging, but I think we've got to understand that if you want easy, you shouldn't be working in South African politics. The point is, coalition politics are complex. They are challenging. There's a lot of egos involved in political parties. It is the nature of the beast. These things do happen. I'm sure our coalition partners might say some unkind things about us sometimes. But the more important point is it's working. And it's working in the only metric that matters, and that is service delivery and stability. Everything else, quite frankly, is noise. And I think the attitude of residents of Tshwane and elsewhere is, we don't care if you guys tear each other to pieces, just deliver the services and deliver it in a stable and non-corrupt manner. And from our point of view, that is what is starting to happen in the city of Tshwane. And we have an attitude as a party to say the best coalitions are run locally. We're not going to interfere nationally. We're not going to be organizing meetings of national leaders of all these parties. The best coalitions are run by those who are on the ground, who understand what needs to be done to make them work. And national players like us should just be supporting characters there to lend support however we can to the good work that is going on.
And as you said that although it's not all smooth sailing, the relationship is working. It might be premature to ask, because you can only do it after the elections. But would ActionSA then, because of its past experiences, then prefer to work with maybe the current ANC or EFF leadership than a Helen Zille-led administration in Johannesburg, or a Cilliers Brink ActionSA-led administration in Tshwane?
So I think from our point of view, we've taken the decision as an organization that we will work with any configuration of political parties in a given municipality based on the merits of the decision. But what you've touched upon is actually a really important point, Seth, because what we are experiencing more and more is that the groupings of parties that work together is actually secondary to the leaders of those parties and those levels. You can have a group of parties in Tshwane that is getting on like a house on fire, and a similar group of parties in Johannesburg that is falling apart. And it comes down to leadership. So we're going to make that decision on its merits. We haven't ventilated our views on whether we'll work with the DA or the ANC in Tshwane or Johannesburg. Those decisions will be made by Action SA in time to come. But what you are raising is an important question, is that the leaders of these parties do matter. Let's take Helen Zille, for example. The last time Helen Zille governed a municipality was 20 years ago and 1,500 kilometers away. And her track record in that municipality depends very much on which side of the railway tracks people hail from. She's also been involved in collapsing all those efforts to restore the coalition in Johannesburg. And a number of political parties have made the remark to say the problem with coalition with the DA is more about Helen Zille than the DA. In other words, as a persona, she is poison to stable, functioning coalitions. And the idea of her being involved in one, much less leading one, is a scary prospect for stable service delivery in a municipality. That's certainly a perspective. A person like Cilliers Brink has been personally responsible for doing great damage to the city of Tshwane. I've mentioned to you the liquidity ratios we inherited, but there's just so much evidence, the electricity debt that had racked up to Eskom and others, that demonstrates that the idea of DA good governance as a brand in Tshwane is a complete myth. That said, the ANC in Johannesburg is an unmitigated disaster, which is precisely why we need to say to the residents of Johannesburg and elsewhere, if you want good and stable and effective government, the recipe appears to be coalitions that are led by Action SA. And hopefully they can put us in a position where that can come true, and we won't find ourselves as a political party trying to do good, but being battered by the forces of corrupt and incompetence and arrogance and failure on the other side.
And a very, very interesting development leading up to the local government elections is your launch of the Big Green Umbrella, joining forces with like minded organizations. The most notable one so far has been the Forum for Service Delivery. Could you unpack this strategy a little bit and maybe just to add on that, since a lot of attention's been on it, why Action SA chose this route rather than possibly joining Unite for Change of Good, Bosa, Horizon Zanzi?
Okay. So I think firstly, Big Green Umbrella predates Unite for Change. So let's put it in that kind of chronology, if you don't mind. But from our point of view, we looked at a situation where ballot papers are becoming comically long in our country. In the last election, Action SA was on the bottom right-hand corner of the second column of parties, which is ridiculous. It is becoming obscene. In the last local government election, Johannesburg had 55 parties on the ballot, and that is just outrageous. And South Africans need fewer and more credible choices. For that reason, we've decided that we were going to engage political parties that are represented at a municipal council level. I'll revert back to that thought in a moment when I talk about Unite for Change. But at the end of the day, we've now engaged a bunch of parties of that nature. The Forum for Service Delivery was one more significant one, which had 30-odd councillors that we were able to bring on board in a number of municipalities. But there have been 8 or 9 other parties since that we have brought on board, each one of them delivering what Unite for Change can't deliver, and that is municipal councillors in municipalities where Action SA can now contest with a foothold. To contest in a municipality where you don't even yet have a councillor is very difficult because it's very hard to demonstrate value and ask residents to give you more councillors. And I think that's one of the flawed ideas of Unite for Change, and there's more than one flawed idea in there. And that is that, between the three of them, they've hardly got 2 councillors to rub together. And that is a challenge in a local government standpoint. This is not a social media election. It's not a parliamentary election. This is an election about feet on the ground, local government, service delivery, bread and butter issues. And if you take an organization like BOSA and RISE, they don't have a single councillor in Gauteng between them. And that makes it a very difficult prospect. But we were involved in talks because, there was a part of this idea that we did favor. And we explored the idea, but ultimately it looks like some of these parties wanted to be the biggest fish in a very small pond, and they didn't want to be a smaller fish in a bigger pond. And that's fine, that's their right. But Action SA is big and strong enough as a brand that we can stand on our own 2 feet and deliver without having to be propped up by anybody else.
And could you please unpack for voters what an Action SA-led administration would be in a town or municipality that is having crippling service delivery issues? If Action SA were to come in with the mayorship, what are the plans of actions, immediate priorities for, say, Johannesburg, for example?
Well, the greatest part of the answer to this question, Seth, is I don't need to tell you what we would do. I could tell you what our leaders have done before. Herman Mashaba was the most successful mayor on record in Johannesburg. Athol Trollip was the most successful mayor on record in Nelson Mandela Bay. And Dr. Nasipi Moya has emerged as the exact same in the city of Tshwane. So what I'll simply do is tell you what was done by those various leaders and what forms part of the Action SA DNA in government now that voters could listen to and say, I can believe what that party says can be done because it's been done before. So I think the biggest thing is you've got to get the finances right. You've got to take money away from the wastages and luxuries of government, and you need to redirect it to the service delivery priorities. Herman Mashaba redirected 2 billion rand from international travel, self-promoting advertising, international membership of bodies, etc., consultants, and he redirected that to the service delivery basics of infrastructure. And that's why during his time, electricity outages came down despite it being in the middle of load shedding during his tenure. Water leaks and bursts came down in the city, along with the losses associated with those particular forms of infrastructure. And 900 kilometers of roads were resurfaced out of 4,000 kilometers of bad roads. So what you're really seeing is redirecting of money wasted on rubbish and redirecting towards the infrastructure priorities. Because until you get the infrastructure right, basic service delivery is always going to be a problem. Beyond there, you've got to set up a capable, strong anti-corruption unit. Herman Mashaba did that. They investigated over 6,000 cases, totaling more than 35 billion rand in transactions, and achieved more than 900 arrests. And I would venture that no other mayor has ever come close to that in the history of local government. I think particularly important was the biggest expansion ever in the history of the JMPD. And you see Dr. Nasipi Moya doing that now in Tshwane, and Athol Trollip started the first Metro Police ever in Nelson Mandela Bay, because we need greater safety. We need Metro Police that can compensate for the failures of our SAPs and put more boots on the ground, which is exactly what Action SA leaders stand for and deliver upon. But it's also quite important that we have a caring city. We have to recognize that these are some of the most unequal cities in the world, and we need to have regard for that fact. 27 clinics were extended in their operating hours in Johannesburg. Dr. Nasipi Moya is now starting that in the city of Tshwane. The first ever drug rehabilitation centers are being rolled out, which really is important in the context of what that challenge represents in our country. Small business incubators became the order of the day. There's just such a long list of things that forms part of those ABCs of local government, and it is about getting the basics right. When we came in Johannesburg, what we found was an ANC predecessor government who wanted to do a little bit of everything, but not enough of anything. And for us, it's about getting the basics right and concentrating real money behind those priorities, then making sure you get a quality of spend. I'll give you an example. When Herman Mashaba was mayor of Johannesburg, the city built the largest electricity substation in the southern hemisphere. And it was built within schedule and under budget. And that, I suppose, is the difference between good local government leadership and the kind of challenges that we see today.
And there's been so far, one mayoral candidate from Action SA has been announced for Ekurhuleni. There's been a lot of excitement around that, and there's been a lot of talks and rumors about for Tshwane, but especially Johannesburg. I know You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I know Action SA plays their cards close to their chest. Is it possible that we could see Herman Mashaba on the ballot for one of these metros?
Well, ActionSA has communicated that we are going to open up our candidate nomination process for a mayoral candidate in Johannesburg. This followed a lengthy discussion of the issue in our National Senate, where Herman Mashaba said himself is that if we cannot find the next Nasipi Moya or Olani Kumalo like we have in Ekurhuleni, then he would be amenable to it. So he's not closed off to the idea. But I suppose the difference between Herman Mashaba and let's say the leaders of some other parties is he doesn't need to cling on to power in a Robert Mugabe-esque kind of manner. He wants strong leaders and young, capable people to come forward and serve when they can. And if we can't put forward such an offer in Johannesburg, there is no one better than Herman Mashaba to do it for all the reasons I just cited you in my answer to your previous question. I think if Johannesburg residents are looking for a way out of the mess that we are all in, and I'm a Johannesburg resident too, it is much more sane to look at somebody who did that in their municipality just 6 years ago than someone who did it 20 years ago, 1,500 kilometers away, and for some of the people.
And my final question for you is, what is Action SA's message for all voters, especially apathetic voters, going into the next local government elections? Why should people put an X next to Action SA next year?
Well, I think the first thing is you've got to tell people to put an X somewhere because there is this terrible misnomer in South African communities that if you stay away, you're punishing politicians. And we need to kill that in its track because actually failed politicians and failed political parties like nothing more than hurtful voters checking out of the system because then they just get to come back and continue breaking the same system that they've been breaking before. So we need to teach South Africans that if you want to punish failed politicians, come out to the poll and punish them with your cross behind somebody else. Don't stay at home and think you're doing yourself a favor because you're not. As it relates to our Action SA, is that right alternative? Let's just look at the broad picture here. 98% of municipalities in South Africa are governed either by the ANC, the DA, or the IFP. And 90% of municipalities in South Africa are dysfunctional. It's got to be the case that South Africans need to look elsewhere for a political alternative to parties that have been around for decades and have presided over the collapse of local government like we have across South Africa in all 9 provinces. From that point of view, we contend that Action SA is a strong and viable alternative for voters who do feel disappointed. And most importantly, we are the only alternative, despite our relative youth, that can put down the leadership pedigree we have in fixing broken municipalities. Because if you've got something broken in your house, you call someone who can come and fix it. Action SA has proven that we have the leaders who know how to fix broken service delivery.
Michael Beaumont, National Chairperson of Action SA, thank you very much for joining Newsday today.
Pleasure is always mine. Thank you.